Good afternoon, everyone. I'm joined here on my left, Chief Juanita Holmes, Chief Rodney Harrison, and Chief Kevin Maloney. First, we're going to discuss the police-involved shooting that occurred yesterday evening in the 71st Precinct, where a man with an illegal firearm shot and wounded his roommate and subsequently shot two of our police officers, both of whom narrowly avoided being killed. We'll also talk about another horrific case when Chief Harrison gets up here, that of a 10-year-old Aiden Wolf in Harlem, whose mother's boyfriend has been now charged with murdering him over the weekend. Chief Harrison will get into details on both of those cases. What last night reminds us is two things. Number one, there is no routine call. And number two, police officers have split-second decisions to make life and death circumstances. We have seen this far too often lately. Whether it's the 105 Precinct in Queens, November 24th, where police officers with a domestic violence victim are both shot when the perpetrator responds back to the home. Or a month later in Brooklyn in the 77th Precinct, again, police officers in uniform, four of them, standing in front of a building with a domestic violence victim when the perpetrator responds back to the scene and shots ring out. In that circumstance, the officer was saved by his department-issued vest. And more recently, a quote-unquote routine graffiti arrest turns violent when the perpetrator turns and begins to engage the officers with gunfire. Despite these risks, the men and women of the New York City Police Department put on their uniform every day and fulfill their oath to keep the people of this great city safe. And I thank them for it. And in my opinion, they do it better than any other police department in this country. Rodney?
Good afternoon. Commissioner, thank you for your leadership and statements that you made regarding the men and women of this police department. This case is currently being reviewed by our Force Investigation Division under the leadership of Kevin Maloney. Just please understand and be aware that the information I'm going to provide is subject to change. But this is what I have. Last night, at approximately 9:15 p.m., one sergeant and three police officers assigned to the 71st Precinct in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, responded to a 911 call for a male shot inside of 42 Hawthorne Street, apartment 2L. For a little context on the building, apartment 2L is located at the top of a narrow flight of stairs, which forced our officers to approach in a single file line. As the officers ascended the stairs, the subject exited his apartment wearing a blanket over his shoulders. The officers then engaged him in conversation regarding the 911 calls for a male shot. At this time, our perpetrator pulled out a .38 caliber revolver from under the blanket and displayed it toward the officers. The officers drew their service weapons and stated multiple times for him to drop his firearm. The perpetrator ignored the multiple commands and fired his revolver 3 times towards the officers who were approximately 10 feet away. The police officer who was first in the single file line instinctively turned his body, bladed himself like this, and was able to avoid a direct impact to his bullet-resistant vest. The bullet grazed the front of his vest, which struck his body-worn camera magnet and lodged inside of his uniform duty jacket. If you just take a look at the jacket to my left, it grazed him and got stuck on the right side of part of his jacket. One of those 3 fired rounds also struck the 4th officer on line, grazing him in his left shin. I'm now going to show you some video that kind of captures the incident at hand. Thereafter, the perpetrator then retreated into his apartment and was not struck by any of the rounds. The perpetrator then barricaded himself inside of the apartment. The officers on the scene, not knowing who was behind the door, turned this incident into a hostage negotiation situation and then requested our emergency service unit, who were able to safely remove the perpetrator from the apartment without any incident. During the course of the investigation, it was determined that the victim of the 911 call is our perpetrator's roommate and sustained a gunshot wound to each of his legs. The victim was removed to Kings County Hospital and is in stable condition. A .38 caliber revolver, an AR-15 semi-automatic rifle, and a shotgun was recovered inside the apartment. Those are the photographs there to your right, or to your left, excuse me. The two officers struck were removed to a local hospital for evaluation and are in stable condition. Our perpetrator was removed to Brookdale Hospital for evaluation and is currently under arrest. This incident, I'm sure everybody can understand, could have been a lot worse. By the grace of God, our heroic officers will be going home. I'll open up the floor for any questions.